Guten Morgen, guten Tag oder guten Abend. Ich bin Eltjo van Gulik und ich bin hier mit meinem guten Freund Ryan Bijkerk. Und wir sind vom GO-EUC. So, with that out of the way, let's quickly switch to English again because I'm much better at that. Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. In the next 25 minutes, we are going to tell you everything you ever wanted to know about a real user experience from a cloud workspace. But before we start, we'd like to make a small warning because we have a lot of data to show you guys today, and we only have 25 minutes. So for that, if you have any questions, please hold on to them until the end. But there we have a Q&A session for you guys. So, as we said, we'll keep the introductions nice and short. My name is Eltjo van Gulik, and as you might have probably guessed by my pronunciation and by my accent, I'm Dutch. I work for a Dutch company called Rawworks, where I am the principal consultant Workspace. And with me here is my good friend and colleague, Ryan Bijkerk.
Yes, that's me. Also working at Rawworks and hopefully delivering great content today for you guys.
Okay, so before we start, did you know that Germans and Dutch folks have a lot of things in common? For instance, our love for beer. And did you also know that Germany as a country drinks more than 8 million liters of beer per year? That's a lot, right? I know, but we got the edge on that. In the Netherlands, we love our beers just a little bit more, and we drink over 8.5 million liters of beer in total. That is quite a lot. But we are not also very passionate about beer, we're also very passionate about performance and data as well. And according to a couple of polls we did on Twitter and on the IGEL community website, that's probably the main reason why you guys are watching this. But before we start, let's do a quick rundown of our platform. Ryan, can you tell the folks something about our platform?
So we divided in two topics, and as Eltjo mentioned, first we're gonna talk a little bit about the platform GO-EUC itself. So GO-EUC is a community initiative that's started by us, and we started back in September 2018. But since the April this year, we transformed to a non-profit foundation, which means we are fully independent and unbiased, and running this platform by and for the community, with 11 active members at the moment. So a big important thing is, of course, our sponsors. So without our sponsors, we're not able to perform or keep our platform running. So big shout out to Triceret, which is a deep printing solution for your virtualized environment, and Logem, which is the benchmarking solution, which is also our primary solution at our platform. So the reason why we have this platform is we believe in the following quote: and doing research is creating new knowledge. And we find this very important, and everything that we research, we publish at our website. So it's open, free. You can just go to the website after this presentation, of course. And you can just read all the latest researches about various topics. Now, for this specific research showing the end-user experience, we came up with this following configuration. So we have used the GO-EUC platform, which at that time was still running at OVH, which having all the crucial components for running a VDI solution. But as we wanted to show some real user experience, we leveraged the Azure environment, Azure Cloud, using a site-to-site VPN. Using the VPN gateway. Now, in order to capture the user experience, we using a capture device, which is represented on the right at our quote customer site. To be honest, it's not really customer site. It was all captured from my home, but it doesn't matter. It's still leveraging real user experience. But we use the capture device with a dedicated machine in order to not influencing the experience that's captured from the device. So this way we are able to show you the real experience in a VDI scenario. So let's go on to the main topic. So we all know that there are three major vendors when we talk about graphics within VDI. So we have the green ones, which is NVIDIA, and we have the blue ones, Intel. You don't see that quite often. Hopefully they will come more in the future. And we have the red players, which is AMD. Now, we see that there is more and more demand for these kinds of graphics, even in a virtualized environment. You have the operating system itself, which is leveraging the GPU, but also think about social media. For instance, YouTube and all the social media like Twitter, they have a lot of rich media content, and it's also leveraging the GPU as it's running in your browser. And don't underestimate the browser itself, because those can be very heavy, both on GPU, but also memory, of course. Nowadays, you also see Office applications also leveraging the GPU, and the big applications like Autodesk and the entire Adobe suites, which been out there for many years. Now, when we typically look at a VDI project, and I've experienced quite of those, we see often that when the project team is finished, everybody's celebrating, whoop, 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 and going like we did a top-notch VDI solution. Everything is consuming or perfect. It cannot go wrong. But when you talk to the end users, they're really frustrated, and it's not like delivering the experience what the entire project team is promised. So they help support, and we all know support. Support is just being support, and it's pushing back towards the project team. And project team is like, it works on my machine. And that's the exact point we want to highlight in this presentation. And you can have a big ass VDI with all the GPUs and everything, all the horsepowers, but what about the endpoints? It's a very important factor within delivering the user experience.
So before we continue, we want to say a special thanks, a special shout out to the ThinkLine specialists in the Netherlands and IGEL the Netherlands, because prior to this research, they delivered 2 big ass boxes to my doorstep filled to the brim with ThinkLines. My wife is still pissed about that, by the way. And from that huge selection, we made a smaller selection of endpoints that we wanted to show you guys today. We got the upcoming UD3, which is actually at the moment is the new UD3. We got the previous UD3. We got a thin laptop. We got a couple of ThinkLines. And we got a special one, the second to last one, which says custom PC. Ryan, can you tell us why that is so special?
You can also see it from the price itself, but it's a little bit of beefy machine because it's not really an endpoint. It's my own gaming PC.
Yeah. So I hope for your sake that one will outperform all the rest of the ThinkLines.
Yeah, I hope as well. Otherwise, I have to invest in another device, of course.
Oh, you can always switch back to a ThinkLine then, right?
Yeah. That's true.
Okay. So what we did, we set up a scenario. And what we did is we took a standard Azure NV6 machine, the promo one. You know why we choose the promo one? Well, we're Dutch. You know what they say about Dutch people, they're cheapskates. So that's why we took the promo one. It's exactly the same as the normal one, but it's just a lot cheaper. It's a pretty beefy machine. It's got 6 vCPUs, 65 gigabytes of memory, and of course it has got a vGPU. And in this case, it is a Tesla M60 card with 1 times 8 gigabytes of memory. The VDIs are Windows 10, 1909, Office 2016, the latest LTSR Citrix VDA, and we optimized it with the 1903 Citrix Optimizer template. Now what we did is we have a single user test with a custom workload. Next slide, please, Ryan. Yep. What we also did, and that's very good to take into consideration, we set a couple of Citrix policies. Firstly, the video codec, we set it to for actively changing regions, build to lossless, and we set a target frame rate of 60 FPS. Normally the default is 30 FPS, and we upped it all the way up to the maximum 60 FPS. We also are using custom workloads, and those are divided into 4 parts. What we also did is, as Ryan explained in the introduction, we recorded the user experience for you guys to show you what an end user will see. So, without further ado, let's go right ahead to the first scenario.
I want to highlight one important thing. And so the goal of our testing scenario is to see the impact of the endpoints. And so therefore, we also decided to go with the NV6, which is way oversized for the workloads we're going to run. But this way, the VDI itself won't be a bottleneck for the workload itself.
Very good point, Ryan. Okay, so we set up the first workload, and the first workload is a typical task worker workload. So there's going to be some data entry. And as you can see, we got the screen divided in a couple of colors, and that will reflect the video part that you're going to see for that thin client. So here we see the first part of the workload. As you can see, it is very minimal. It is just data entry in Word. And it is actually very boring to watch. You can better watch grass grow or paint dry, or the other way around, because nothing much intensive. If we skip ahead to the data, I won't sit you guys through the whole thing here. As you can see from the data, you can clearly see that in terms of CPU usage, there's not much going on. It's a very basic scenario. And as you could see in the videos as well, all endpoints cope pretty well with this scenario without any problem, even Ryan's game PC. If we skip to the GPU usage, again, as we expected, nothing much going on here. The GPU can basically do this with most cores tied behind its back. If we look at the frames per second, as we mentioned before, there are not that many screen updates. And as you might recall, we set the video codec for actively changing regions. And it means that Citrix will only send over parts of the screen that have actually changed. So the biggest part of the screen remains static, and there won't be any change there. So let's go ahead to a next part of the workload. And this part is a PowerPoint presentation. And this will probably be a little more intensive than the Word part. We are going to show you a presentation we did for Synergy. I think it was in 2018. I'm not sure anymore. Could be 2019. I'm going to look at Ryan. Was it 2019 or 18?
19.
2019, a presentation we did in 2019. And we rely heavily on images and slide transitions in our presentation. So without further ado, roll it, Ryan. There we go.
So welcome to our presentation.
Yeah, welcome at Synergy. No, just kidding. So as you can see, there are a lot of slide transitions in between, and that'll be a little more intensive than the other things. And please also take a very good look at the animation here. That's going to appear right after this slide. Yeah, there we go. And as you can see in the dark blue, there's one thin client that is really, really struggling, and it is the Dell Wise D7. It just couldn't keep up with the current frame updates. So if we skip to the data, we can clearly see that as expected, the workload is a little bit more CPU intensive than the previous workload, which makes sense, right? There are a lot more screen updates, a lot more things that need to be changed in the screen due to all the images, slide translations, stuff like that. And that is reflected in the overall CPU usage of the endpoints. So if we look at the GPU utilization, we can see overall that there is a trend that the CPU utilization is a little bit higher than in the Word part of the workload. But still, it's only very minimal. It doesn't top anywhere above 25% in total. Now there's something interesting happening. This is a comparison of the FPS metric that we saw. And if we would have just looked at the numbers, we could have concluded that in the dark blue on the right, the Dell Wise D7 would have performed just as good as the other endpoints. I mean, they're all delivering roughly 100% of the frames that are being sent to them. But we could clearly see in the video that the Dell Wise D7 didn't cope. So that just goes to show that just the numbers don't tell the complete picture. Next up is the car visualizer.
So the car visualizer. So here we have selected a couple devices, and because there are more visual screen updates, so we have decided to only show 4 to make the screen a little bit larger. Yeah, 4. To make the screens a little bit larger. So we have selected the IGEL UD3, so the new one and the older one. Of course, my game PC, because I want to prove at least that my PC can cope up delivering the great user experience. And we also selected the not so well performing Dell machine, just to see what's happening when the machine cannot keep up with even showing a presentation. So there's also going to be audio in here, and it's important to also listen to the audio. So it's put up each other, so it's going to be a little bit loud, but we have to put it in balance. But as you can see already from the rotation, the new UD3 and my game PC is rotating the same speed. But you can already see that the older UD3 is lagging behind, but it is also jittering in the audio, as you can hear. And let's not talk about the Dell one, because it's really lagging behind, and it's not so great user experience. So let's move on towards the data. Now, as we selected a large machine, we're not utilizing the full CPU utilization, which makes sense because we got like 6 CPUs. It's only running one user, one single workload, but you can see here a little bit of a difference already in the Dell Wise because it's consuming less CPU. Now going to the GPU utilization, you can see already a difference between the great delivering machines, so the new UD3 and my game PC, luckily, and the older UD3 and the Dell Wise, as it's not leveraging the same GPU utilization pattern compared to the other ones. Now, if we transition this towards a comparison, some percentage, you can see the difference in utilization is clear on average. As the experience is less, the GPU is not utilized fully, which is also for the frame buffer, which makes sense, of course. Now, here, luckily, we can see there's a big difference in the frames per second. The new UD3 is able to deliver the almost towards the 60 FPS, and luckily also my game PC. But as it's shown also in the video, both the older UD3 and the Dell Wise are not keeping up with the delivering the frames, which luckily is also presented in the FPS chart. And when you compare that, it's a huge difference. So depending on the content, you can see the impact of FPS, but it's important to take the video into account, of course. Now for the last scenario, we have selected another workload, which is video. So we have selected the Big Buck Bunny video, which is a full HD video running on 60 FPS. And again, we're gonna include some sound here. So let me do the sound a little bit softer so you can still hear me. And I think everybody already seen this video. But right from the start, you can see that the Dell Wise is not keeping up with delivering the video itself. And it's really lagging behind.
Not keeping up is an understatement.
Yeah. It's both for video, but also for audio. But also the other UD3, the older one, is lagging behind, including with the audio stream.
This really is the school example of a bad user experience for your end users, if you're using the Dell Wise D7, for instance.
Yeah. Now, one thing that we have noticed that at the end of the video, we have seen that the device was lagging behind, but once the device was freed up with the resources, the audio stream also kicked in. So here you still have the lagging experience, and all the audio is screwed up in the last couple of seconds because it could not keep up with the stream itself, which was a funny experience. Now looking at the data. Again, we can see that there is some CPU utilization, but the GPU is going to be leveraged, so it's not fully utilized. Although using one single user on this type of machine, you're still consuming quite some resources. Now, looking at the GPU utilization, I was quite surprised that only a single user with a single video was capable to sometime hit even 50% utilization, which is quite a lot. But here you can see that also for the Dell Wise, the GPU utilization in a video stream is still used. But you can also see that once the video is done, the Dell was still lagging behind, so it's also utilized longer at the end. Now, comparing this, again, you see a similar GPU utilization, which was quite strange. So looking at the data, there is not real difference, but in the video and experience, there is a big difference. Now, again, the frame buffer was also quite consumed, and again, the Dell one was lagging behind, which ended up with a very high frame buffer compared to the other scenarios, to the new UD3. Now let's look at the frames per second, and here, luckily, you can see a big difference between the different devices. And again, the new UD3, again, luckily, my game PC is keeping up delivering the best experience that's capable in the protocol itself, and the older UD3 and the Dell Wise is lagging behind. So although the GPU is still utilized quite high, the frames are still lagging behind and not delivered towards the endpoint. And even for the Dell, it's a 50% difference in the amounts of frames that's delivered, which is a lot.
Yeah, that is very, very bad in terms of user experience.
Now, in summary, it's very important to understand that an endpoint can make or break your user experience. If you even deliver the best hardware in your data center or selected the NV6 within Azure, when you have a lacking or a not so well performing endpoint, it can break the experience as we have seen. So therefore, it's important to at least understand the workload you're going to deliver. So as we have shown with the Word, you can just select an older endpoint. But when you have more GPU intensive workload, then you also need to take the endpoint into account, as can have a big factor. And this is a question we ask a lot in these kinds of projects. So why the high investments in all the GPUs and the VDI and the hardware, and have a budget constraints on your endpoints, as this is still a part of the entire solution you're going to deliver? It doesn't make sense. Ensure to include that in your project.
Yeah, indeed. So if there's one thing we want you guys to take away from our presentation today, is that you should always validate your results, because without data, you're just another person with an opinion. And while we're on that subject, do you remember that in the intro I said that us Dutch people drink a lot more beer than our German neighbors? Well, that's not true. That is actually a complete lie. If you look at the data here in Wikipedia, it says we only drink 2.7 million liters of beer, while the Germans drink way over 8. So always check your facts, because without data, you're just another person with an opinion. And on that note, thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, stick to the Q&A, and we'll be more than happy to answer any questions you have. And otherwise, Hope to see you guys soon. Take care.
Thank you, guys.